podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast covering the games all the time rather than once every 4 years. I'm John.
And I'm Michael, and once again, Paris 2024 has delivered an outstanding games, and we should say, so has Paralympics GB.
Yeah, we discuss our highlights of the Paralympics.
Coming up, we'll talk swimming, we'll talk cycling, rowing, triathlon, and archery, to name but a few.
And athletics. Do we need a fresh approach in Britain? And Michael has a radical, and I mean radical, plan for the Paralympics.
It's just a conversation starter at this stage. Yes, I'm talking about the fact that they maybe should separate themselves from the Olympic Games. In fact, Parallel Olympics no more. I will tell you why. More about my thoughts coming up.
Yeah, we also love to hear from you, so get in touch and see what we're all about. Anything But Footy on social media or through the website anythingbutfooty.com. So before the biggest proposal to change world sport in a generation from Michael, I'm not underplaying it slightly. Some of the highlights from Paris 2024. Just firstly, obviously it's very different because we're not there. You've been working particularly hard. I've done a bit in the last couple of weeks on the Paralympics, and success from Paralympics GB point of view as we record. They are second in the medal table. America are coming up behind them. The United States worth watching over the next few days. But Great Britain, 33 gold, 25 silver, 18 bronze, 76 medals in total, behind China, nearly half as many in medals as behind China, who are in first place. United States third with 66 medals, and France, who I thought might have a better Paralympics, a bit like they did with the Olympics, are currently fourth in the table at the moment with 52 medals, 16 gold, so about half of what Great Britain have done. And I don't think we can start, really, Michael, without talking about the Paralympics, without starting with swimming. Because Aquatics GB have just absolutely blown everyone out of the water.
Yeah, the La Défense Arena has heard a few renditions, hasn't it, of God Save the King. I was speaking to Grace Harvey after she won her gold medal, and she was saying that she was there getting ready for her medal ceremony and suddenly had a panic that she perhaps didn't know the words, so she was trying to learn them. Paralympics GB and Aquatics GB put this brilliant statistic out a couple of days ago. Whether it's still right now, I'm not sure, but they put this thing out the other day that if Aquatics GB, in other words, if the swimmers were a country on their own, they would have been fifth in the medal table. They would have been above France, above Italy, above Australia as well. Such has been the performance of the swimmers in the pool. And, you know, I think it's fantastic that we're seeing some of the names that we know in the pool. So people like, you know, Ellie Chalice coming back, people like Grace Harvey coming back. We're seeing some new names as well. And I think that's obviously something that we will definitely get onto. As far as track and field is concerned, where are the new names? Where is the new blood coming from in parasport? But I think, you cannot take away from what has been just the most unbelievable meet for Aquatics GB in the swimming pool. Swimmers doing absolutely fantastic. I mean, China, obviously, ahead even further. I mean, I was covering it the other night, and I think China had two sweeps of the podium. Right. One after the other, gold, silver and bronze in two consecutive events. There's a lot of swimming events, so there are a lot of medals up for grabs. But, you know, fair play. If you've got all those events and you've got people that can enter them, and you've got that strength in depth, which I think we've seen as well, you know, other names to throw out there, names like Maisie Summers-Newton as well. You know, I think if you've got that strength in depth, then you know, target those medals and win those medals, which is exactly what they've gone and done. And
it did feel slightly with the swimming team that they had some people retire, move away. Some people weren't selected, who we have known since way back in 2012. But that allowed, as you say, the likes of Louise Fiddis, who became a Paralympic champion for the first time. She was at Tokyo and has now become a Paralympic champion. Tully Kearney, you mentioned, defending her title, but also making sure that she got 2 golds this time after a silver. I thought it was really interesting that she said after her interview that it was the silver medal that she'd focused on, really, from the time before. That was the thing that was driving her on. Some amazing swims, and also Stephen Clegg as well. We haven't had that many British men. That would be what I would say from a swimming point of view.
Isn't it, from the Olympics?
Yeah.
You know, the male swimmers dominated the Olympic Games, and it's definitely the female swimmers dominating here at the Paralympic Games.
Yeah, and Clegg getting that gold medal, like his sister Libby, of course, in athletics, and he was thrilled with that. And William Ellard also getting a gold medal, and I think Rhys Darby picked up a silver medal in the last couple of nights as well. So we still want to see some more British men coming through, because as you say, there are a lot of swimming finals. There are chances to win medals. I would just say the fact that it lasts for the whole games. We see, of course, in the Olympics, you have the first 6 or 7 nights swimming, and then it transfers to athletics. We know it's going to be different with LA the other way round. There are a lot of swimming events, and I think it's also, from a broadcasting point of view, I think it's an easy thing to show because people understand it. Effectively, you win the race and you get the medals. So from I can kind of see why Channel 4 show so many of the races, but it does mean that you can't then spin and go and show wheelchair basketball or wheelchair rugby because, actually, no, we've got about 7 finals that we need to put on tonight.
Yeah, I mean, other names as well, just to throw out there. I'm sure we're going to miss names, but Poppy Maskill, Brock Whiston, and Alice Ty as well. Alice Ty getting an individual gold at these games, amongst other medals as well. Had previously won Paralympic gold, I think, in a relay event too. Yeah, you're right. I think obviously in that arena as well, and in terms of the coverage of swimming, it's an easy-ish win in terms of the broadcast setup. And therefore, I think the fact that you've got that big morning session and then you've got that big session in the afternoon and evening as well, it fills quite a large amount of broadcast time. But also, I think from our point of view, and we've been critical in the past, haven't we, about how we are sometimes overly UK-centric about the coverage certain sports get. The reason we are getting so much swimming coverage on Channel 4 is because we're getting so many medals. Yeah. How much blind football have you seen? Goalball. I mean, none, because there isn't a British team there. So, that is one of the reasons why we're getting so much coverage. And it's one of those things, isn't it, that because we're getting the coverage and the visibility, hopefully more people will then be encouraged to take up the sport, and that will be the legacy and the inspiration and everything else that we talk about when we discuss the Olympic and the Paralympic Games. So you would hope that there's another huge tranche of athletes coming through in swimming because they are inspired by all of that coverage. So where does something like goalball go? And that will be something that, David Clark, who's in charge at Paralympics GB, who, of course, that was his sport, one of his sports, wasn't it? So, where do sports like that, in the same way at the Olympics, where do sports like basketball or volleyball or water polo, where do they get that recognition? Where do they get that coverage to try and encourage people into those sports? It's a chicken and egg situation, isn't it?
Yeah, we haven't seen like blind football, which has been at the Eiffel Tower at all. I haven't seen it at all. And as you say, one of David Clark's sports. Just finally on the swimming. So Aquatics GB, 14 golds, 7 silver, 2 bronze as we speak, 23 medals. What's really interesting, Michael, is that they've won those gold medals, and gold medals make the difference. That's why they're topping the swimming table. But overall, they're actually 4th in the amount of medals they've won in swimming. And the top nation in swimming of how many medals they've won is actually Ukraine. Wow. Ukraine have won more medals. Great Britain are 4th, and Ukraine have won more than them in total. So it's really interesting how when you start looking away, and as I say, the USA only 7 gold medals in the swimming pool. So again, you would expect that to be different for LA in 4 years' time, and we know that Team USA have really been focusing on it, and they're certainly I think they've won a couple of medals this morning in the athletics. They're certainly beginning now to go, actually, there's opportunities here, and Great Britain will be looking over its shoulder. It has finished 2nd in the medals table for a very long time.
Yeah, you just wonder, though, whether US would have come better this time in the same way they did at the Olympics, knowing that they will be hosting next time. They may have a good end to the games with some of the team sports, of course, wrapping up as well towards the end of the games.
They've got the basketball to come.
Yeah, I was expecting a little bit more from the US based on what they did at the Olympics.
I think they're coming through, though. I think because, as I said, they're now on overall they're in 25 golds compared with 33 for Great Britain, and that's the thing. If you're picking up 6 or 7 golds a day, which of course we were a few days ago. And we've got more cycling to come, which we'll talk about. But yeah, I agree. I thought France and USA would push Britain maybe harder than they have, but we've got 3 days still to go, so we'll see.
And the bigger question there is the structure then, because obviously we know Team USA is one Team USA, Olympics and Paralympics. They don't have the separate organisations that we have in this country, Team GB for the Olympics and Paralympics GB. And how many people have made that mistake, by the way, over the past couple of weeks by calling this the Paralympic team Team GB?
Does anyone ever read emails? Does anyone ever read an email? Please call them Paralympics GB.
Yeah, so I mean that's different. They've brought the two organisations into one in the US, obviously with LA in mind and those parallel games that we talk about. So yeah, it's I just thought they might have come a bit stronger, and they may well do over the next couple of days. I mean, we talk about swimming there. Let's move on to the cycling. We've got the road cycling taking place as we speak.
Yeah.
But the track cycling, Paralympics GB, British cycling, 14 medals in total. So top of the table there with 5 gold, 6 silver, 3 bronze, 8 more than China. So again, on the track at the velodrome, British cycling, standout nation.
Yeah, and some new names as well. So yes, you have the likes of Jodie Cundy and Kadina Cox, and we saw that actually it didn't go their way in their individual events, but actually they joined forces and came together for the relay at the end, which was good to see. But you do wonder whether at some point there will be decisions made about standing down and retiring and moving on. But new names coming through. Archie Atkinson. I mean, he was on for a gold medal certainty, wasn't he? And he just literally ran out of energy with about a couple of laps to go and fell off his bike and won that silver. But he's a 20-year-old kid. And he's like, I'm in hindsight, he said, I'm pleased with how I did. I'm gutted that I didn't win the gold medal, but I can go again. And that's what you want to see. You want to see the new names coming through. I think Sophie Unwin and Jenny Hull, of course, appeared at Tokyo with about 6. They only started together about 6 months before Tokyo. Now they're Paralympic champions 3 years on. Can they continue and dominate? And so many names, as you say, in the cycling.
Schrager, another one.
Yeah, a new Paralympic champion. Yeah,
Paralympic champion debut as well. So I think that's always the challenge, isn't it? And I think with the Paralympic Games, what we see is athletes are able to go on a lot longer. I mean, we saw obviously yesterday morning as we record, Dame Sarah Story began her Paralympic career in 1992. I was
Barcelona. At school.
Yeah, I know. I was too. It was a year before my GCSEs that Dame Sarah started. I mean, obviously she went in very young and as a swimmer.
Yeah.
And then obviously she switched and gone into cycling as well. But still the best at what she does. I mean, what was that? 4 or 5 defences now of that individual time.
Beijing 2008. She's won it since.
Yeah, so you can go on longer because than in the Olympic Games. I think there is more opportunities there, but you can't, I think, keep relying on the older guard. And I didn't say old guard; I said older guard. By the way, if the likes of Jodie Cundy and others are listening, because I think they themselves will want to see new blood coming into the sport, and certainly Stephen Park and the team. The performance team at British Cycling will want to be encouraging new people in. And again, that visibility of seeing such a successful velodrome performance will hopefully then spur on those that are maybe already in the programme. And hopefully will, spur on others that aren't in the programme yet to maybe consider trying to get onto the programme.
Yeah, a couple of other names. James Ball and Stephen Lloyd obviously won gold, I think, for the first time, just ahead of Neil Fackie and Matt Rotherham, and Lizzie Jordan and Danny Kahn as well. I think Lizzie only started cycling in 2020. So again, new people coming through, and it is a theme, and we'll move on to rowing, because there were 5 rowing finals and 4 medalists from a British rowing point of view.
Are we doing rowing already? Are we not leaving that to later on in the
because it was so good. Again, good.
You talked there about the 4 medals, 3 golds. So a gold for Ben Pritchard, perfection from Pritchard in the PR1 men's singles sculls. That's how I described that. Gold for the mixed cox fore as well. Gold for Lauren Rouse and Greg Stevenson in the mixed PR2 double sculls. They've been unbeaten. Lauren Rouse has been unbeaten for 14 years. I read in that event.
As the mixed Cox Fore have been unbeaten for 14 years.
14 years. No longer winning run in British sport.
Yeah.
For those guys. Yeah, Lauren Rouse and Greg Stevenson, in the PR2 double sculls. And then Sam Murray and Annie Caddick in the mixed PR3 double sculls, the silver medal for them. So, yeah, another really successful trip to the rowing lake, a place you know well, for British rowing. Now, they will be under Louise Kingsley, their performance director, who we know ran the Paralympic programme, and then obviously picked up the Olympic programme as well after the disappointment of Tokyo, of the Olympic Games. But they will be pretty satisfied, I would think, at Caversham, at the Redgrave Pinsent Lake. Their performance across both games, across the Olympic Games and across the Paralympic Games, has just been an absolute standout, hasn't it?
I think so. And those new names, I mean, Greg Stevenson came in with Lauren to defend her title. She's now become the first ever rower to win 3 Paralympic gold medals. Now Greg's not a youngster, he's a former Royal Marine, but he's come into that team and a new name. But in that mix 4 that you mentioned as well, we know Gidra Rakuskat and Erin Kennedy were defending champions, but you had Frankie Allen, Josh O'Brien, Ed Fuller. I think Josh only came in the last year into that team, and that's what you need. You want to see, don't you? You want to see that development and new people coming through. So yeah, I think rowing have been superb. Your sport triathlon as well. I was so pleased for Claire Cashmore to get she was upgraded up to a silver, didn't she? Because she got a bronze in Tokyo.
She was bronze in Tokyo. I think she had a penalty, didn't she?
That's
Tokyo,
right. Yeah.
From memory, which rather sort of kiboshed her chances. She also had the issue in Tokyo that she was racing after she'd just seen her partner Dave Ellis obviously not finish the race because of a mechanical issue, so had to kind of deal with the mental stress of seeing her partner's hopes and dreams and ambitions implode, and then go out and try and run her own race. And this time, because of the water quality tests that were taking place in the Seine, we essentially had that festival of triathlon in 2 parts. We had an early morning session and then a later session. And what it meant is that really, even if you were on later, you didn't really know what else was happening, which actually probably helped Claire. I think initially the plan was that she was going to go first, and then Dave Ellis was going to be second, and she was delighted with that. But then obviously the rescheduling, when they just said, right, we're going to do everything on a day, just meant that she was just able to concentrate on her own race. And I spoke to her, actually. I had a quick chat with her afterwards, friend of the pod, Claire Cashmore. And I had a quick chat with her, and she said that when she finished, the first thing that went through her mind, obviously she'd won that silver medal, was what happened with Dave? What happened with David and Luke, his guide? And someone said to her they hadn't won.
No.
I said, well, what an awful time to try and play that trick on you. And she says, no, I just think they genuinely just didn't know.
Right.
And so she had this period of time after she finished her race where she knew she'd won the silver, upgraded her bronze, and she was happy with that silver medal. She just didn't have anything left. She, as she put it, and as athletes always put it, they left everything out there. There wasn't that frustration with the medal that there was 3 years ago in Tokyo. She knew that on the day that was the best performance, the best thing that she could deliver. So she's internally happy, delighted she's won her silver medal, and then internally she's got this huge amount of different emotions going on because she thinks her partner hasn't, having worked so hard and given absolutely everything to go again. But fortunately, the information she'd got, whether it was a badly timed joke or not, was wrong. And yes, so at the triathlon, we found out eventually silver for her, and Dave and Luke Pollard winning the gold medal as well. So yeah, loved that. I loved watching the triathlon. I'm glad everyone seems to have got around happy and healthy as well.
And just to say that, the fact that Paris 2024 did what it said it was going to do, it has staged every event in the Olympics and every event in the Paralympics. Now they've had to juggle, they've had to be adaptable, and we've had days of they probably didn't get as much training as they wanted in the Seine. But the marathon swimming, the triathlon, has all been at that Pont Alexandre, the Trois Bridge, an amazing setting. and they have
And
totally delivered over this summer.
What? I think we've got ourselves worked up into a bit of a frenzy about these delays and the water quality. And we've created a bit more of an issue and a story than actually exists with the athletes. Because the other gold medal in triathlon was for Megan Richter in the PTS fore. Hannah Moore winning the bronze in that event. We should mention as well, Lauren Steadman won the bronze. She didn't retain the title. She was in the same event as Claire Cashmore. So Claire upgraded and Lauren went from gold to bronze this time. It was probably going to be her last Paralympic Games. But I spoke to Megan Richter to get back to that point, and I asked her, the usual questions about the water quality, about the delay. The athletes don't care.
No.
They do it all the time, all around the world. And we heard this as well, didn't we, from Beth Potter and Alex Yee at the Olympic Games. Because most people don't follow triathlon as closely, obviously, as they do, because they're competing, and as we do, because, it's one of my favourite sports, and I try and watch and follow as much of it as I can. These things happen all the time. There's always water quality issues. There's always delays.
Doesn't make it right, though.
It doesn't make it right, but it's not been as big a deal. If we are going to, as we continue to say, put the athletes first, it's something I think the media have created as a little way to bash the organisers of Paris 2024.
Yeah.
And it's not actually been as big a deal for the athletes. They were prepared and they're set up to deal with it.
But I think from a healthy world point of view, wouldn't it be lovely that we actually have rivers that you can go and swim in? And I spoke to Hector Pardew from the marathon swimming after he finished 6th, I think, in the Olympics, and he works with up at the Lake District, Lake Windermere, as part of their team to promote water quality. And it is important that because if you can't swim in these rivers, you're never going to be a marathon swimmer. You're never going to be an open water swimmer. You're never going to be a triathlete. So we've got to make it better. There's no point just saying, oh well, it's okay. We want to make it better, and I think that's probably the profile that the Sen has put on this. That it's not just in our country where we've got issues. It is across the world, and we've got to make it better. So, look, I've been really clear. I think it was an amazing venue, and I think Paris organisers have done an incredible job of delivering that. And they said they would deliver it, and they did. And they haven't backtracked, and they have absolutely done it. So well done to them.
All sports can improve, obviously, and I think in this country we saw, didn't we, the launch of the initiative featuring, British Rowing, Paddle UK, and other organisations around clean water.
Yeah.
So, if Paris 2024 have done one other thing other than successfully get these events away with athletes at the centre of them, they have started conversations and shone a spotlight, as you say, there on some of the issues.
Coming up, we're going to talk about the story of the Paralympics so far. We will talk athletics, and we're discussing, of course, Michael's big plans for the Paralympics. This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
You're listening to Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast. We're discussing the Paris Paralympics. Stand by. I've got an idea. I mean, it's just an idea. I think John's overselling it. I just thought it would be worth starting a conversation, maybe create a little bit of debate about the future of the Paralympic Games. I don't think there's anything wrong with the now, but, as I said before, all sports can improve, all things can move forward, nothing can stand still. So that's to come.
That is to come.
We'll talk track and field.
Yeah.
That's to come as well. But highlight of the Games, archery.
Oh, Jodie Grinham is someone who I think should have been on the front pages of every single newspaper in the last week. A medal in an individual when she was up against the reigning champion, a fellow Brit. I think it was Phoebe Patterson-Pine, and she had to shoot a better than an 8 to win the bronze medal, and she didn't, and that meant that Jodie won the bronze medal, and that was an incredible story in itself. Jodie's 7 months pregnant. She's had various miscarriages. They decided she missed Tokyo because of what she was trying to have a family, and then didn't qualify for Tokyo. And she was like, I'm not going to do this again. We're just going to see how it happens, see what happens. She got pregnant. She's still come to the Paralympics, and now she's won a gold medal with Nathan McQueen in the mixed team. Again, an incredible performance from somebody that just shows. And there's been a lot of talk this summer about mums, about people. Natasha Baker in equestrian came back, won a bronze medal earlier this week after having a baby in the last cycle. So, and we saw that in the Olympics. Talked about it a lot. But to be pregnant and to be delivering, and as she said, after
not delivering the baby,
but delivering medals, the delivering the baby is still to come. But as she said, if I was working in an office, I'd still be working in an office. So what's the difference? Incredible.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. I mean, a couple of other sports, or one other sport I just want to mention as well. Stephen Maguire in the boccia had won all the medals that boccia had to offer, but not the Paralympics. So, 2 decades he's been working, prepared for one of his key matches by getting in the queue for Oasis. Was unsuccessful at that point because he had to go to the call room and begin his warm-ups. So he was in the queue, went away, won his match, came back, had found they'd logged him out of his queue, so went back into the queue, and was number 500,000 for Oasis tickets. So I suspect Liam and Noel don't listen to anything but footy. Liam Gallagher once came up on Facebook as someone I should befriend. So maybe I should give it a go. But if anyone listening has any connection whatsoever with Oasis, with Liam and Noel, Stephen Maguire, who went on to win gold in boccia, and he's sharing a flat with David Smith, who we know I think has won 3 boccia gold medals before. So it was nice for him to get that gold medal. If anyone has any connections with Oasis, I think they should get Stephen Maguire a ticket, at least one ticket, if not the full backstage passes, meet and greet, hospitality package, because he won the boccia gold medal and lost his place in the queue to do it.
Yeah, and he roll with it as well, doesn't he? Boccia. Oh, damn. Just quickly on the other sport that we haven't mentioned because it hasn't started yet, but para canoe. We wish all of our we haven't even seen them yet in action, so we're looking forward to seeing them and the judo boys as well. So plenty more medals to come over the coming days, we think. But what about athletics? Michael, I mentioned right at the top of the show some outstanding individual performances again. Sabrina Fortune, I thought was incredible. Hannah Cockcroft just keeps on delivering, and Carrie Adenhagen is always just slightly behind her in the same race. Sammy Kinghorn, they called her Silver Sammy, and now she won that gold medal in the 100 metres, which was a great story, and hopefully she can kick on from here as well. She got experience in Tokyo. She's now a Paralympic champion, and she can go ahead for LA in 4 years' time. But where are the stories? Where are the new stars coming through? We didn't see great performances from Thomas Young, defending champion, Sophie Hahn, defending champion. Where are the new stars coming through from an athletics point of view? And Johnny Peacock, of course, calling for the Paralympians to be included in the Diamond League while he was finishing fifth or sixth in the final. Yeah,
my concern for track and field is it is the same names that people are talking about. So as we know, I've been covering these Paralympic Games for national radio, for Talk Sport. So that is an interesting, I think, touch point for what the man or woman in the street is talking about, where the Paralympic Games are concerned. Because the questions, the people that are mentioned on Talk Sport are the names, the sports, the events that are cutting through, if you like, to the general public more so than they are to us, because this is what we do, we cover it all the time. So the names that I have been asked about this week when it comes to athletics,
can I guess them?
Yeah, go on.
David Weir,
number 1. Yep. Go on. Number 2, you've said it already.
Johnny Peacock,
and number 3,
Hannah Cockcroft.
Those are the 3 names. Now, those are all names, aren't they, from London 2012? And, they are all champions. They are all multi-Paralympic medalists. They've obviously made a number of appearances. But still, 12 years on from London 2012, they are the 3 that people can name, can recall that people recognise, and that is a concern, I think. And I don't think that is just my concern. I know that's Hannah Cockcroft's concern. I think she would love to have more competition, to be honest. And she has asked and been on this podcast before many times, asking where are the new stars? Who is there to come next after Johnny Peacock? We spoke to Richard Whitehead, didn't we?
Yeah, before the games.
Recently. Yeah, before the games on the podcast as well. And again, I mean, we were having a bit of a joke because we know Richard quite well. Richard was saying that we were trying to retire him and move him off the stage. But the serious point is, and I know obviously he's not competing at these games. He's working in the media at these games. But again, who is the new Richard Whitehead? And there may well be people, in British athletics or people that follow, para-athletics even closer than we do that might have those names to throw at us.
Yep.
But I would say we're pretty well informed, and we don't necessarily know where they are. You've mentioned some of the others. I mean, Sophie Hahn was unbeatable for a long time. And then, Birmingham, the Commonwealth Games, she was shocked there by Olivia Breen of Wales, who obviously is at the Paralympics as well, sprinting and long jumping, I think. Where do the next names come from? Who replaces Hannah Cockcroft, or does Hannah Cockcroft just keep on going? She's 32. If you look at Sarah Story, you look at David Weir. I mean, Hannah Cockcroft's got more games in her, of course.
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I mean, another name I'd highlight, 16-year-old Maddie Down, I think her name is, and she's done well in the sprinting and the long jump. Not getting medals, but you're in the finals, so that's a young person coming through. I think something's quite interesting with some of the other sports we've already mentioned, like Megan Richter, who won the triathlon gold. She was in cycling a few years ago. There does seem to be some movement between some of the Paralympic sports where you can go and do other things. Does anyone ever go back to athletics? Does anyone do something else and go back to athletics? I think Jack Buckner put out on social media, the CEO of British Athletics, that he was disappointed with some of the Channel 4 coverage, that they're not showing as much of the athletics. But ultimately, as you said earlier, if you're not out there winning medals, from a British point of view, it's very, very difficult to then show it. So
yeah, Karim Chan in the long jump missed a medal by
a centimetre.
1 centimetre. I didn't see much of that event,
no.
Unfortunately.
But so there are people coming through, but are they, as you say, going to be names that in 4 years' time people are going to recognise? And I think it's just something that it's slightly noticeable when you look at the swimming team and you look at the cycling team, that there are new people coming through and winning gold medals. And we'd like to see that from an athletics point of view. And I'm sure, as you say, British Athletics are working hard to make sure that continues in the years to come.
So do you think this might be the last hurrah for the likes of David Weir and Johnny Peacock?
Look, I think David Weir is still a world-class marathon racer, as we've seen from the London Marathon, but he's up against Marcel Hoog, who is dominating.
We will see David Weir in the marathon, won't we?
Yeah, we will.
Coming days, we'll find out.
Yeah. But Marcel Hoog has won the last few London marathons, and is the Swiss star, and his compatriot Catherine de Bruyne. She won the London Marathon this year. She's won 3 golds in 3 finals on the track, 800, 1500 and 5,000 metres. So there are stars worldwide who are out there delivering, and that means it's then harder for the likes of David Weir to medal. So look, as you said to Richard Whitehead, I'm not looking to retire people. I think it's the hardest part of an athlete's life. We know the British Elite Athletes Association and have worked with them, and we spoke to Alice Deering, didn't we, in a special podcast about how difficult it is to take that decision to step away. So David Weir gets paid to go and race in marathons across the world, and that should be absolutely something that he should continue to do if that's what he wants to do. But what we should be looking at from a British point of view is, are these representatives the best representatives for the team? And is Johnny Peacock finishing 5th and him saying, well, in 2017 I could beat all these people? Well, that's 7 years ago. How do you propose to change that in 4 years' time when you're 4 years older? And they are questions that unfortunately you have to ask. And if you want to be recognised as an elite athlete, you have to also be asked, well, when is it, as Andy Murray found, when is it the time to retire? You have to be asked those questions as well.
Yeah, I spoke to Andy Lapthorne just before we recorded this, who won the silver medal in the quad doubles wheelchair tennis. And he said to me, and I've avoided that this time around, actually asking people about the future. I saw the tweet from Simone Biles, and actually it's something I'd been thinking about. Is we're very quick, aren't we, with our Olympic and Paralympic athletes to ask them what next, and it's really difficult, I think, in the immediate aftermath of an event. That said, I spoke to Andy Lapthorne, and he said to me, this is it. It's my life. Hey, I've played my last match in the Paralympics. He said, I'm not retiring though. I still want to go out to Australia, defend the title there, but I just know that with the wheelchair tennis circuit being as busy and as hectic as it is, because it's run very much in tandem, obviously, with the able-bodied circuit, there are lots and lots of tournaments, lots and lots of travel. He says, I'm away from home 30-plus weeks of the year, and I'm getting to the point where I don't want to do that anymore, and the thought of doing that for another 4 years to Los Angeles just feels alien to me. So, yeah, I'm going to wind down, I think, essentially. Andy Lapthorne is going to wind down the career, but he's confirmed already that, there won't be another Paralympic Games for him. That seems to me like, the intelligent thing to do is to know that, at his age, a time of life, family situation, whatever it is, well, now is the time to step away from that stage. And he's got a young man making his debut, Greg Slade, alongside him. What we need to hope is that in that quad doubles that there's someone to come in alongside Greg and can go again in Los Angeles and maybe upgrade that silver to the gold.
And it's something we should have mentioned when we sort of said there's still to come, is wheelchair tennis. Alfie Hewitt, if he wins the individual Paralympic gold medal, he will have done what they say, everything. So he's won all the Grand Slams and the Paralympics from an individual point of view, which would be an incredible achievement. And wheelchair tennis is actually, because it has those 4 majors going on every year, the profile of it is getting bigger and bigger, isn't it? And it is getting more recognised. So actually, you can understand why the Paralympics maybe not the most important thing for some of these players moving forward.
And I should mention as well, I was at the school games at Loughborough University at the weekend, and actually wheelchair tennis was the sport that I got to cover there. And I saw 2 very able, bright young guys, both 11 years of age, one called Matt Knudsen and one called Lucas de Gouveia. And I was really impressed with both of them. And I was speaking to Greg Slade about them because he's come through the school games setup before, and he knows both of these guys as well. They were playing other boys in the boys singles, up to the age of 17. So, there is that pipeline because they know that on the circuit for them in wheelchair tennis, there is around about 150 tournaments every year. So, there is that career path. There is a career there for these guys if they're good enough and they want it hard enough.
Yeah, and certainly the recognition is there if they can get to that level, which is incredible. Go on.
And it's not there, unfortunately, for the athletes and the swimmers.
Yes.
I mean, I spoke to Ellie Chalice about this, and I was like, how do we keep you guys relevant for 4 years? As much as anything, but footy's trying to do it.
Yeah.
It can't just be you and me. And she kind of shrugged her shoulders a bit and went, hey, that's just the way it is for us. We know that, and that's why the Paralympic Games is so important to us, because it is the one opportunity we get every 4 years, because we know that next time we have a world IPC swimming championship, no one's going to come.
Which is why also we need the Commonwealth Games, and we need that decision to be made for 2026, which brings us very nicely onto our next topic, which we will talk about in just mere moments, because we are doing a slightly longer podcast than we would normally, but as you can understand, we're rounding up Paris 2024 and the Paralympics in particular. This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast.
This is Anything But Footy. We're rounding up the Paralympic Games. It's not quite over, of course, so there'll be more things to round up, but we're rounding up where we are with the Paralympic Games and what Paralympics GB have achieved. And we've spoken at length, haven't we, about the staging of the Games, the future of the Games, and not so much the future of the Games, actually, but, the future for some of the athletes and some of the sports in the Games. And it started a bit of a debate. We don't disagree about a lot.
No, we don't really.
But we have very similar views on many things. But I've just been thinking that maybe rather than run the Paralympics as a parallel games, and that is what Paralympics stands for, bringing it onto the same stages, into the same venues that the Olympic Games have been in, the same city a few weeks after, that maybe that model needs to be adjusted. Maybe it's time to make the Paralympic Games more of a standalone event. Now, they would argue that it already is a standalone event. The IPC will say, quite rightly, it's the third biggest sporting event globally. And the other thing to say, obviously, is we know the Paralympic Games are going to take place in 2028 in Los Angeles after the Olympic Games, and we know that the same will happen in Brisbane in 2032, as far as, we can predict the future.
Unless they listen to this podcast and Michael
but
inspires them.
Listening and having spoken to so many of the athletes and talking to them and going back to that thing I just said about Ellie Chalice, how do we make these guys more relevant? Why do we not stage the Paralympic Games outside of an Olympic year? And actually, if we've got an Olympic year in 2024, we've got a Winter Olympic year in 2026, and I'm thinking here about the Summer Paralympics. I haven't quite thought it through for the Winter Paralympics, I've got to be honest. Why not have a Summer Paralympics in 2025 and then another one in 2027 and then another one in 2029? And at least then the athletes are going front and centre every 2 years. And why do we have to attach it to the Olympic Games and the Olympic venues? Could we not go potentially to other regions, other cities that might put more into the Paralympic Games in terms of the build-up, the hype, the marketing, rather than have it tagged on as a bit of an afterthought to the Olympics? Now, I would say that London is an exception to this. What happened in 2012, and we know when we've had Tanni Grey-Thompson on this podcast, the Paralympics were run and organised very much as a parallel games. I don't think that's been the case. For Rio, certainly we know.
I think for Paris, I think for Paris it has. I think they have, but
sure.
But I think with Paris it's a very different. The French way of looking, unfortunately, at disability is very different, and I think it has. But the organisers were very much, this is the same games. We are here to do the Paralympics.
In words,
yeah.
In words they have been, but not in action, because
they put the triathlon in the same place. They haven't changed any of the venues. Yes, they moved the media centre from one location to another, but
the transport setup's not been the same. The broadcast coverage has not been. But the
broadcast,
same.
I remember being in London 2012 and suddenly going, well, why can't I watch this thing? And they were, we don't broadcast that. And I was like, what? Yeah. But so that is an issue. Look, I think you make some really interesting points about it. But I would refer you back to what Ellie Chalice said, which is, when I go to a swimming meet or a world para swimming meet, there's nobody there. So what is the difference between having a standalone Paralympics to having a World Championships?
I don't think you would run a Women's Football World Cup straight after a Men's Football World Cup in the same place, would you? And actually, the Women's Football World Cup has grown and developed and taken on an importance in its own place in the calendar. What we've got with these Paralympic Games at the minute is they're competing against themselves, because we've got the Paralympics going on. We've also got Diamond League Athletics going on. We've got wheelchair tennis going on at the Paralympic Games. We've got the US Open tennis going on.
Yep.
Why can't we have the Paralympics in that protected window that we have with the Olympic Games, where other sport kind of shuts down around it? We don't have F1 Grand Prix. Obviously, in this country, we have it in that little gap between the end of the football season and the start of the next football season. In England, I know the Scottish football season doesn't really have that gap as such, but I just wonder whether if you could separate it out and bring it into that protected window, you give the athletes 2 bites at it in the 4-year cycle as opposed to the 1 bite at it, and maybe you take it to some cities, slightly smaller cities than Paris. There'll still need to be cities that have infrastructure, but if you were to take a standalone Paralympics in 2027 to Budapest or to Stockholm or Dublin or Sydney even, go back to some of the facilities that are there, and you give it the right marketing strategy, I wonder whether you could make a success of it that is not reliant on the success of an Olympic Games that comes first.
When England staged the Rugby League World Cup a couple of years ago, they brought the women's game into it, and they brought the wheelchair rugby into it to make it the biggest rugby league festival that they could. And some would say that wheelchair rugby league wheelchair rugby competition was the best that they've ever staged. London 2017 World Athletics Championships took place in the Olympic Stadium in London, and then the Para Athletics World Championship took place after that with crowds full as well. It seems like Commonwealth Games are looking to incorporate the para athletes as part of their, and they're very proud of that. The Commonwealth Games have stated again during these Paralympics, we want to have people together. What you're now saying is remove it entirely. So everything that everybody's been doing and moving forward, you're now turning around and going, well, actually, if you then were entirely separate, wouldn't that be better?
And isn't that what we've always said, though, haven't we? That we wanted people to look at our para athletes and see their ability first and foremost. So let's have confidence in those athletes. Let's have confidence in those events. Let's have confidence in those sports, that they can be entertaining, they can be exciting, and they can be as good as they possibly can be, and be their own spectacle.
But don't they miss out on locations like Paris, LA, Brisbane? Just for example, we know they will happen, so we're not saying that they're not going to. But if you're not in LA and you're going to Helsinki, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but it's a different event. It's not the world's biggest show, is it? Would it still be the third biggest sporting event? I'm not sure it would, if it was every 2 years. Or
I think if you gave it that slightly smaller footprint, so for example, you could stage a standalone Paralympic Games in Birmingham, in the Midlands, probably tomorrow. You know, you've got that velodrome in Derby, you've got the Alexander Stadium, you've got the NEC, you've got the pool there in Sandwell. If you were to take it to that slightly smaller footprint and you were to have all of those venues filled because of the strategy, the marketing plan, the excitement that you would build, because it seems to me that, you know, the Paralympic team announcements get lost in amongst the Olympic team announcements, and then when you really want to be hyping the sports people taking part in the Paralympics, you can't, because everything kind of shuts down for 2 weeks while we've got the Olympics on.
Yeah.
And that is exactly the window where actually we should have all of the big programs and the big TV shows building up to the Paralympic Games, but we don't, because we're so obsessed with what's happening in this mammoth event that is the Olympic Games. And I'm not saying that we don't go to LA with it and we don't go to Brisbane. I'm saying we don't have to. You know, if we've got it every two years, we've got lots of cities, but you could open it up to other places, other countries. You know, if we're about inclusion and about diversification, then I think that would be a good thing, because you could offer a Paralympic Games to countries that otherwise would never have a hope of staging them because they couldn't stage the Olympic Games.
Ultimately, though, doesn't the Paralympics, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but ultimately the Paralympics gets the coverage because it's in the same Olympic city?
I don't think that's the case. I think if you were to repackage, and it would still be the Paralympics, that's the first thing to say. I think you would still have gold, silver and bronze medals, you would still run it pretty much along the same lines as it is now, but you just take it out of that Olympic window, because people are still talking to me about the Olympic Games whilst the Paralympic Games are going on. And I just think if we're talking about putting athletes first, it gives athletes a bigger, better opportunity to shine. And if we're saying that we have confidence in Paralympic sport, then why do we need to hang it off the back of the Olympic Games?
I think you're also giving more opportunities for people to not cover it, because if you have the Olympics and then it's followed 2 weeks later by the Paralympics, there is that. There's the interest from spectators' point of view, but also from a media point of view, that we're seeing the same places that we saw with the Olympics in Paris, etc., etc. I think that if by moving it and putting it in a different location in a different time, you're actually allowing more people to then go, actually, I'm not that interested. And that's what it allowed. That's potentially what you're allowing to happen. But I totally agree with your point about the Women's Football World Cup. That again, it used to be something that happened and not many people are aware of, and now it's become bigger and more focused. And I think there's rows over broadcast rights. I think there was just before the last games were right up to the top, weren't they? The BBC were struggling to sign the rights to show all the games, etc., etc. So there is potential, but it's very difficult to rip everything up and start again, isn't it? When you're just getting to a point. Isn't the Paris Paralympics the most successful Paralympics since London? We'll find out in a few days' time.
So now's the time to make the big jump and stand on your own 2 feet. You've spoken, and this will be the last thing I say, because one of us has got to have the last word on this. So this will be the last word I say. If you want to come back and then wrap up, that's absolutely fine. But we've spoken before about you don't compare. Why would you compare women's?
But we all compare because everyone compares. That's life. People compare all the time. People compare social media, Facebook posts of children going to school. That's just what people do.
I know, but I just think that we've spent 4 years rallying against saying we should compare this to that. And people are constantly comparing the Paralympics to the Olympic Games. So let's take that opportunity away from them. Last word from me.
We'd love to hear what you have to say on it. You've heard my view, you've heard Michael's view. I think it's a really interesting debate, and it certainly has put us, as you say, we rarely disagree, but we've talked about this a number of times, and we can't agree. And I think it would be lovely to hear from you. So get in touch with us the usual ways on Anything But Footy on all the socials. Threads has been very popular over the Olympics and Paralympics around the world. So please feel free to follow us on that. We're still on X, we're on Insta, and on the website you can email us via that as well. We're going to have some new blogs coming on the website. If you're still into your Olympic music, there is the playlist on Spotify that is still there. If you want to rekindle some of the...
Have we got Free From Desire on that now?
We need to add Free From Desire. We do. I'm going to go and do that straight away.
And that medal music.
Oh yeah, if that's available.
Well,
I miss it. I really miss it.
I've got it now as an MP3 on my phone. It's my ringtone.
So it's been an incredible summer. As Michael said, we're here to make sure that we continue to champion our Olympic and Paralympic athletes in the years and months and weeks to come. So stay with us as we're moving on to Milan and we're looking ahead to LA. But it is merci beaucoup Paris, très bien, c'est magnifique, formidable.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.